All right, everybody, I think we'll get started. Again, hi. Welcome to our Tech Talk Tuesday. This is Doug Mewmaw, Director of Education with MPG. Excited for this webinar. It's one of my favorite webinars that we do. I've actually taught this at Common and at tech conferences. So with that, well, we'll get started. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the powerful functionality with before versus after. Again, it's one of my favorite subjects because it's the essence of what we do as systems people. If you think about it, we're always trying to prove what's going on to internal, external customers management. So we're going to use the Power Analytics before versus after functionality to really get down to a deeper level and really see what's going on when there are changes in our environment. And we're really excited to show you our file system before versus after techniques. For you IBMI guys that are starting to go in the deep end of the pool and go on the AIX side of the house, we're going to show you how you can take this before versus after concept and really understand your file systems at a deeper level. I always think of the file systems like when I first started in the AS400 world, and I'm going to be old there and say AS400, but remember when we all looked at IFS, it was kind of that hidden area that we were trying to understand and the like. So file systems are kind of in that same vein. So just a quick poll. I just want to get a feel for the audience, and the question is very simple. And I just want to see the platforms that you guys are doing, so let me launch the poll. So tell me if you're doing IBMI, if you're doing AIX Unix side, or if you're doing both. There we go. It took a while for webinar to cooperate. We'll give it a few more moments here. It's kind of what I expected. Okay, it's exactly what I expected. So a lot of IBMI out there, but a lot of you folks are doing both platforms, and that's kind of where we're all at nowadays. So I think this is a perfect Tech Talk Tuesday because when we get to the last section, you'll see things that you're going to have to start to support, and we're going to make it a lot easier for you. All right, so let's go back and let's begin. So let's talk about change. One of the things that I just like to define it off the bat, what are changes? Obviously, we're going to see as systems guys, we're going to see application changes. We're going to see system changes when we do operating systems, PTFs, and the like. Tuning changes when we make memory changes, or maybe we add more cores. We need to look at the impact of that. Hardware changes when you do actual giant upgrades, when you go from Power 8 to Power 9 and so forth. Network changes. A lot of people forget when we can't assume that network changes are everything's gonna be okay, so we have to measure. And we'll talk about one more, the type of change that everybody forgets, but when we get it, we all go, oh. And that's called discovering a change. Here's a great screenshot of, you could look at a really neat historical CPU graph and notice out of nowhere, we've got alarming growth on the system. This is actually a real life example. We can talk more on this in a bit, but I want to show you, you're going to see that type of change on your system because the neat thing about having Performance Navigator and Power Navigator, that movie camera's on. So you see all this historical data collecting, you'll see this phenomenon very often. All right, So why we're here is this screen right here. You're going to get good days and bad days. And as systems folks, we are, we're our job description is to figure out what the heck is going on. So when you get this kind of good day, bad day scenario, and I've been in many, you can imagine how many sites I've been to in 14 years here at MPG, and when I was even as a tech support manager back in my old job, this phenomena happened all the time. And my number one responsibility to my CIO was we had to figure out what was going on. So that's what we're going to get out of this before versus after concept. One of the things I like to show, and you can see the phenomenon is the same on every one of these graphs. I don't even have to tell you what those metrics are, but we can all look at those graphs and say, little, big, and we can see something change. So a good sysadmin will always go down to the by date level, and you can see when things change. So that's when we can start to have this really cool before versus after analysis. So I'll ask some bold questions up front. Does everyone out there do structured monthly reporting? When system issues occur, have you ever used this phrase to management? I have a feeling, and I'll say insert theory here, this is going on. We've all done it. I've done it. And the one thing I've learned is management wants to know exactly what's going on. They don't like theories. They don't like feelings. So the neat thing about this before versus after concept is we're going to give management exactly what they need and want. I just had a real life example this week where a customer just needed to tell management what they're seeing. And sometimes management just needs to see supporting docker report to see, oh yeah, you're right, this is what's going on. So that's the level we're going to get to. The most important questions, and one that I already know the answer, but a lot of us when we first, are sysadmins, we're fighting fires and we're doing everything. But we've got to ask the question, do we measure the impact of changes before it goes live? Now, I know it's really easy to say no when we're really busy, but the culture change that we all need to do is be proactive and say, okay, if we're putting in this new order entry module, what's the impact of it? Is it more, are we using more cores? Is it more faulting the most? And the beauty of Performance Navigator and Power Navigator is you can do that. There's no more excuses. You can actually, I used to do this in my test environment where I would go to my application team and say, okay, start the test now. And guess what? The movie camera's on the system all day, right? We've got that IBM raw data collecting going all day. If I know I start at noon and end at 2 p.m., I can measure everything. So the key is we've got to do that. And then guess what? When we go live, we don't assume everything's okay. We measure the impact after it goes live. After this session, I know you guys, once you see the before versus after, because I know a lot of you have heard about it and you probably know it enough to get you in trouble. I was the same way. Once you see how easy it is, your processes will change forever. So some great real life in the trenches questions, as I call them. I'll get questions like this. Hey, CPU jumped up yesterday. What's different? Or, hey, after a hardware change, did the upgrade make a difference? Here's a great one I had at Common a few years ago. We did a major application upgrade in January, and I have a feeling my CPU was affected negatively. What can I do? Those are all types of questions that you can say, okay, how do I answer them? And we're going to answer them with before versus after. So my 3 techniques: day versus day. I love to do, measure a day before the change, a day after. You may look at the whole day. You may look at 8 to 5. You may look at nightly batch. It's entirely up to you. And it all depends on what message you're trying to convey and prove to management, right? If everything was slow at nightly batch, you can compare good days and bad days and see what's different. Another type of technique, and again, a lot of this is all personal preference. It all depends on your style. Multiple period analysis is a great example where someone says, hey, what did we do last quarter versus this quarter? Last month versus this month? Great example. What did we look like a week before the upgrade, a week after the upgrade? So we'll show you how to do that kind of analysis. And then one that's kind of It's kind of, I'm going to say getting fancy, but great real life examples where when you discover a change and say, oh my gosh, what happened in, my example where October had alarming growth. Well, guess what? You can do a month versus month analysis, and you could look at, the month before and the month after, and you can see comparisons there. We'll use something called resource consumption analysis, where a lot of you may not know that, but it's a mission critical thing that you should do on your systems on the first of every month, just to see what's using your resources. So let's start with day versus day. Just what are the type of comparisons that we're going to do? We're going to compare good days versus bad days, like I said. You might do last month end versus this is month end. Simple baseline data comparisons. You might have let's look at disk this day versus disk this day, or machine pool faulting this day. It all depends on what if you've got like a good day, bad day, and you just want to compare metrics. You might be doing something as simple as library analysis or IFS analysis. What we look like this day versus 6 months ago. And then obviously very timely, right, this time of the year for retail shops, what we look at Black Friday or Cyber Monday, last year versus this year. So you can get really great day versus day comparisons and so on. All right. So the question I probably get the most when I'm training or when we're doing support is people love the functionality, but a lot of folks just don't know how do I set the before versus after dates. So after this webinar, you're gonna get it. So there are 3 ways. The first way is my favorite way, and I call it my highly recommended methodology because it's so simple. You're going to use a by date graph when you're looking. And by the way, you can do this in any by date graph. CPU, disk, memory, doesn't matter. But when you're on a by date graph, you're going to go down to the x-axis and you're going to set the dates that way. And I'm going to show you this live and with the screenshot. But that's just a simple way to do it. But for folks that want to do it via the calendar menu option, we have a pull down where you can do a before versus after calendar menu, and you can do it in our edit system option dates and go to a before versus after date tab, and you can set it that way. So just a couple screenshots, and then we'll do a live demo. So here's an example of a by date graph. It's CPU, and we can all see in the middle of that graph that we have this huge spike. Something happened. So if I wanted to do my analysis and figure out what's different between the 1st of September and August 31st, I need to set my dates. So I can go into a before date, and I'm right clicking on the 31st there, and I'm going to set that date as my before date. I'm going to do the same thing on the big spike and set it as my after date. So that's one methodology. The second methodology, and again, this is all personal preference, you can go up to the Power Analytics menu and say set the dates, and look what you get. You get a nice calendar pull down where you can do the dates that way. The third option is you can go edit system option dates, click on a tab, and you can set the dates that way. You can see why I like this method over here because I'm looking right at my data. I can see my good, phenomenon, my bad phenomenon. I can see the change of why I want to analyze. So again, that's a personal preference. That's a thing I do. When you set the dates, regardless of how you set the dates, the really neat thing about the product is you can right click in the middle of the screen, and I love that you get this new compare menu. And I'll show you this to you live. But look how neat it is. You can actually see the before date and after date, and we show you the day of the week. I really love that because I'm an apples to apples comparison guy. I want to compare a Wednesday to Thursday. In my example here, we're just comparing Wednesday to Thursday because we saw the, little spike, big spike kind of thing. So that's, again, personal preference. If your workload is the same from day to day, then you can do the day before. But if you've got fluctuating workloads, you might want to do, Wednesday to Wednesday kind of thing. All right, so let's jump right in the demos. This is fun for me to show. So let's just pick this real life example. CPU jumped up yesterday. What's different? So I'm going to switch over to PerfNav. Hopefully I can do that. I'm going to run a current day graph just to make sure I'm connected. Hopefully Murphy's Law won't get us. I think I'm there. All right, so let's do my historical CPU example. So I get this example a lot in class where I've actually had a CIO walk in once where they were a customer was having system issues. They said we didn't make any changes and they wanted to know what's different. So what I did is we just brought up a CPU graph, and I love this example. Look at this giant spike here. Let's pretend this just happened. So I'm going to kind of make my screen look like it just happened. So I'm going to say end graph here. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the bad day first. So I'm going to hover right over that Wednesday, and I'm going to set the date as my after date. So it's my bad date. So now if I want to do apples to apples, right? And here's a little trick. Don't fight your data. When you have a lot of data, make your bars bigger or your area graph bigger. Watch what I'm going to do. I could use the data scope indicator and move it, or one of the techniques that Randy taught me a billion years ago is this. I can go down here, if I can get and I can say start graph here. So do you see how he made my zoom better where I can click on days? So there's my bad day. So if I wanted to do apples to apples, 7 days prior would be the 13th. There we go. We click on that. And now I make that my before date. Very, very easy to set the dates. And you can see why I like to do it on a by date graph. You can see the by date is down here, because I like to see when it's good and when it's bad. One of the terms I use in class, and Randy's laughing already, but I use the little big, right? When we have that little big phenomenon, we need to know what's different. So now I could go up here in my Power Analytics menu, and I could go in before versus after, and I could do day versus day, and I could do all this. But what I like to do, remember when I make that day versus day, when I set my before days, I can right click in the middle of the screen and look at that. How cool is that? That you get this neat compare menu that pops up. And by the way, what that's telling you is once you have a before date and after date set, this is all the cool stuff you can do to do your analysis. Like last month we did disk analysis. We were up here and we were doing all this stuff, right? Why is disk growing, library, and IFS. But now, today, what was our goal? My CPU jumped up. I want to know what's different. So I can go in here and I can, hopefully, come on mouse. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to look at my jobs for both days. And what do I want to look at? CPU. So check how cool this is. Now we're running a script. It says we're going to compare the 13th to the 20th. Yes, that's correct. And now I just sit back and watch the magic. Notice it's going in and it's looking at the 13th. It's looking at the 20th. I mean, how cool is that? What'd that take? 5 seconds? So we can see at the top of this that we looked at the top jobs on the 13th and the top jobs on the 20th, and now we're just doing simple percentage of change math and looking at what's new and what changed. You can see that we had 6 new jobs and 1 system task. I love that we get down to that level too. And by the way, those new jobs and new tasks were using 92% of the box. No kidding. And then you can see down here there were jobs that were on both days that we look at the percentage of change math for those as well. Now, look at the side-by-side picture. How cool is that you can see the differences between those 2 days? And then when you scroll down, here are the top jobs on the 13th. Here are the top jobs on the 20th, and you can see all these new jobs showed up. It's easy to see why my CPU jumped up, because look at the first 2 jobs. These were user space jobs. I had to look them up. It's been a while since I saw these jobs, but it deals with like traces, performance traces and the like. But in this particular day, look at that. What do we have? 80% of those jobs were taken over the CPU, and that's why our CPU jumped up. No more guessing, no more having a feeling. 5 seconds after setting the before and after date, we know the answer, which is really cool. Okay, so that's example 1. So let's go back. Let's give example 2. All right, so example 2, if I get my mouse to work, we did a hardware upgrade, right? Or in this example, we might have added memory. And that's the example I'm going to show you. Did the upgrade make a difference? So So let's do that. So I'm going to go back to PerfNav. I'm going to switch systems to one where I know we did a memory upgrade. And just to show it to you, let's do graph, memory, one of my favorite graphs, memory size versus faulting. Because when you do that, and I'm going to get down to the date level. Remember, the date levels are great data level because we can see exactly what's going on. And look at that. Look, oops, come on. Just going to zoom out. So look at this graph. Let's talk about what the heck is that doing, Murphy? All right, so look at this graph. We can see it's a 2 Y-scale graph. Over here, we're looking at the faults per second. And then on the other Y-scale graph, we're looking Y2. This blue is how much memory is on the system. And we can see right here, we did an upgrade. So it's really neat. And what we all used to do in the old days, and maybe a lot of you haven't seen this, but I'm just going to split the trend line. So what we used to do is we'd split the trend line and we'd drag this over before the change, and this is after the change. And what we'd all would do was click on it and we'd look at our average before, and then we'd click on this one and we'd look at the average after, and we'd have to think, was it better? Well, guess what? We made it easy for you because we made a before versus after tab. Look at that. No more guessing. We know that after the upgrade, we improved faulting 32, 33%. Now, what's my golden rule when you make changes? Just because you changed memory and it got better doesn't mean everything else is okay. You have to measure it. So guess what we did? Now I'm gonna do this and show you. I'm gonna join the trend line up, and I'm gonna right click on this trend line. Notice there's no before versus after here. There's no menu option there. But when you split the trend line and you do this analysis, so I'll just do that again, bring that over there, bring that here. Now look what appears. A before versus after. So what does that mean? That means for that manual thing I just did where I got the 33% improvement, I can now run a before versus after script, and we can look at all core metrics, right? We're not going to assume everything's okay. We're going to run it. So this is what we refer to as a multiple period analysis, right? And by the way, look I can do 40 days over here versus 20 over here. I could do 2 weeks over here versus 2 weeks. It does not matter. You're in control. In this example, I'm just going to run it as a split trend line, and we'll just show you what it'll do. So now notice it's looking at the left trend line, looking at the right trend line, and it's measuring, and it's going every core metric. You can see we're going to go CPU, CPW, and the idea here is you're going to give management, here's the impact of when we added memory, and you're going to look at all core metrics. Now we expect to see what? We know we're going to see faulting improve 33%, but what about our other core metrics? And what's cool about this is you could go get a cup of coffee right now, right? This thing is just going to run, and the beautiful thing about it, it's a really neat output, HTML output that you could print out and give your management to show you the impact. This is something you guys should do after any change, whether it be a giant upgrade or just tuning. Okay, so I like that we do this because we give you the option to put a customized title in there. If you said yes, you could say, impact of adding memory in September. I'll just show you no to show you the default. So basically, this is the menu right here, or the where you'll actually show your date comparison. So this is where your customized title would go right there. All right, so second page, we just show you that what we're doing in the analysis, but let's get down to the nitty gritty. This is the cool stuff. What I love about this is we show you a side-by-side comparison. Notice the y-axis exactly the same, and we can show you before picture, after picture. By the way, we measured 67 days over here versus 75 over here. Does not matter. You can get as granular as you want, week to week, month to month, all up to you. But what's neat is we show you the pictures, we show you the numbers behind the graph, and we give you text. So again, for people that are numbers crunchers, they can look at the table. For people like text, they can look here, or big picture people, you can do this. So we can see in this example that CPU was 22% less, CPW was 16% less. Now this is kind of neat. We're measuring disk space. So here's an example of a metric that you grade as well, right? We just don't give you the numbers. We tell you if it's green, good, yellow, warning, red, bad. We all know the best practice guideline for disk is to be under 80%. We can see the peak is starting to get up there, and we can see that even the average is approaching the guideline. In this example, we can see that disk space utilization went down 3.4%. Let's get to ARM utilization. Look at this. I love a great example. Notice big bar, big bar, big bar. Notice smaller bars. We've improved ARM utilization by 33%. Interesting. Let's think about why that happened. And we'll keep going down. Notice, by the way, we're in the green. The best practice guideline is to be under 15% busy. Now we get to disk response time. It's in the green as well. The best practice guideline, 4 milliseconds. We can see it improved a bit. And now here's the bang for your buck moment right here. No kidding. Look at our disk ops. So our average disk ops and reads and writes all went down. So why would that happen? Well, if we think about it logically, we added memory. So we know when there's a fault, right, and I don't have that information I need, everything stops dead in its tracks. I need to do a sync IO. We go out to disk to get it. Well, guess what? We don't have to go out and disk get it as much now because we added memory. Very, very cool. And it's neat to see the cause and effect when you make changes. So you can see here that we have less disk ops. And now when we get down to memory, there's our 33% right there. And look what we do too. We actually show you the percentage of change of math on your memory. So in this example, right, we had this much memory before, we added this. So you could say, hey, Mr. CIO, when we added 33% more memory, I laugh that it's the same number, our faulting improved 33%. It doesn't always it doesn't always work that way, but it's kind of fun when math does that for you. And you can see we get down to faulting factor, improved 17%. There's other graph, disk ops due to faulting, that improved obviously too. Look at this. I noticed this when I did this morning. Look at machine pool faulting. Wow. So look how bad it was. The best practice guideline. This is one of my core things. I'm passionate about this because I've seen so many sites that don't realize that this is bad. But remember, this is your OS, right? I always say, how can your application run smoothly if your OS is not firing on all cylinders? Notice that your machine pool faulting is really bad. It's over 10 faults a second, which is the guideline. Now, we improved dramatically, which is great. But I kind of notice here that there might be a tuning opportunity on this site. You can see the peak's bad, and the peak's not always a bad thing because if it's just, one day or whatever. But we'll go down to a day versus day thing and really look at this. But this is just one of those, make a mental note and say, okay, it improved a lot, but we may have to do some more tuning. All right, and then we get down response time in this example, even though it's blink of an eye stuff, response time even got better, and so forth. So very, very cool. That's what I refer to as a multiple period before versus after. Now, I'll go and let's go back and just show you how back to a day versus day. So let's compare a day versus day before the change and a day after the upgrade and see what it looks like. Very, very common technique. You can see I'm kind of all over the map here, but this is what you're doing before versus after. You kind of start high and drill down and so forth. So we know, I'll give you a pretty neat example here. I'm just going to make this y-axis up so you can see the bars. I know for a fact that we did the upgrade around September 20th. So you want to see a little trick. You don't have to be on your metric that you started on to do a before versus after. You can be on any graph. So if I know that I did September 20th memory upgrade, I'm on a jobs graph right now. I can go just randomly out here. There's Wednesday the 16th. I'm going to make that my before date, right? So you can see what I'm doing. I go up to set, go over to before date, and just to prove it to you, watch when I click in the middle of the graph. There's my new before date. Now I'm going to go over here, and I know it's after. Let me do an apples to apples. There's Wednesday the 8th. Set that as my after date. And now we can do a before versus after analysis. So this time we're going to do a day versus day comparison. So we're going to measure the impact of that memory upgrade, but now get down to a cool view, like a 24-hour view. But we're going to get fancy. We're going to confirm our dates, but look what we're going to say now. I'm going to show you how to say, I'm going to go just 8 to 5, right? Your boss may say, what we do midnight to 3 in the morning, or 8 to 5, or during the afternoon when we're loading up our trucks in the warehouse. You can get very, very specific. So I'm going to say no, and then see what it says? Set the trend line to your desired range. Very, very easy. I could drag this here over to 8 o'clock. I can drag that over here to 17. I'll just do it the way that I like to do it. I go down here and I say start trends here. I go over here. I say end trends here. So now you just hit the continue button, and now watch how cool we get. So now you can see that the graphs are zooming in between 8 and 5. So we're going to get the same concept that we just did. We're going to get this cool side-by-side window report, but now we're at a day level, which is really cool. And I will tell you guys that this is recorded, so you can come back to this and see this. At the end of this, we're actually gonna try something today, and I'm laughing already. We're gonna try to take questions live. So at the end of this, go ahead and raise your hand, and we'll do our best. We'll unmute you, and we'll have some questions. And if not, if people are shy, and just send us email questions, we can answer those as well. But how neat, again, the ability of these scripts where you could multitask, be doing other things. This is running in background. And again, the whole function, if you think about have a report that's going to compare 2 days for 10, 12 metrics that happens in less than 2 minutes, pretty amazing stuff. A lot of us used to do this all manually, so it's kind of neat that this you're able to do this. Again, let's just say no, and you see now I'm comparing this date to this date, and notice we're comparing 8 to 5. So unless Murphy gets us, what don't you love a fun teaching moment? So there you go. There's our CPU before, there's after. It's interesting to see. I'm guessing, I didn't really look at this, they probably added some cores for this, and that's why the CPU went down, unless the workload's completely different. Look at that. Yeah, I think what's that? Yeah, look what they did. So it's subtle, but you can see it. Look, right? I think, yeah, look at that. Not much, but look what the average, look where the cores were here, just over that 300 number, and then look at that CPW, and look at it's higher there. So they added 2 cores. Yeah, 2 cores. Huh. Randy's in the room, and I didn't do this one, but it's cool. So there's a great example of looking at not only this memory thing, they added cores, and notice how the CPW improved. Very cool. All right, there's our disk space again. Let's just get down to the ones that we saw. There's your ARM utilization. Very, very cool side-by-side graph where you can see ARM utilization improve dramatically. In this example, looks like disk response time's about the same. You can see something's going on there. But anyway, wow, look at the disk ops. There's what we talked about before. So you can see adding the memory, a lot less disk ops. You guys get the point, right? Very, very easy side-by-side analysis. Again, I use this term enough to make you guys sick of it, but no more guessing, no more having a feeling. This is what you do with systems folks, right? You're giving this proof, this supporting doc, to whoever the audience is. I used to do this to applications, right? When we were doing an application change, you can do the same before versus after at the job level. I'm not going to show it today for the sake of time, but imagine doing the same thing on one of your core applications where you could look at CPU, CPW, sync IO, faulting, async IO, logical IO, and so forth. Very, very powerful stuff that you can get to. All right, so I think that's kind of some really simple before versus after. Now let's get to kind of a complex one. So let's answer that question about the applications. So let me go here just to get caught up here. All right. So this really happened to me. I don't have the real life data, but I'll show you the technique. But I did this at Common for somebody, and in less than 5 minutes, we knew we had supporting doc that we could go back to the vendor to show them that their CPU did infect, or their application did affect CPU negatively. And again, it was cool supporting doc that they could prove to the vendor what was going on. So let me show you that. So one of the things that I teach at Common, I teach in classes, and it's one of the biggest things that you guys should do on the first of every month. So we all can do this fun Power Analytics management reporting, and we can show things forever. CPU, disk, memory, we all get it. But the hidden gem, the hidden thing in the product, and it's such a key thing for every sysadmin should do. And when I show it to them, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I've never realized that." Is we have the ability with this movie camera on, as we call it, that we can look back every month and see what was using your resources. So we have this really cool concept called monthly resource consumption analysis. If you go in here on your monthly summary, this is the way I used to do it for years and years and years. I would go in here to all jobs. I'm pretending it's the 1st of December, and it would go in here, and it brings up a really, really cool report. And there's a lot in this report. You can get as fancy as you want, but it's a report that's going to look at every job in your system, and you can look at CPU, IO, it does not matter. I mean, look at how many columns are here. I will tell you what I used to do back in the day. I would go to my golden columns of CPU, IO, and faulting. This is just what I did. And you guys can play with this, have fun with this report. I mean, you can go out there and you can get to such a cool level. But I would go in here and I would, in November, I would click on CPU in descending order, and I would go and I could figure out exactly what jobs were my big hitters, right? So that's what I would do. So in this example, if I wanted to look at, in fact, I'm going to go to my MPG system just because I know the jobs. But in this example, if I wanted to click on here and see a historical view of these PR jobs, I could do that, right? But I'm going to do it because one, I know I've got a great real life example here. All right, so same thing. And now if I want to do this resource consumption comparison, right, I could have done what I just did. I could have gone up here and gone summary, and I can go all jobs, and I laugh because I used to do this manually. I could print this report, have it over on my right, and then I could go over here and do the same thing on a prior interval and look at October, and I could literally have a physical 2 pieces of paper side by side and try to compare it. Did I used to do that back in the day? Yeah, I did. I got pretty good at it, but there's got to be a better way, and we created such a cool way. So I'm going to show it to you. So in that example where is this application change affecting my CPU negatively? I'll show you what we did. We were literally in the hotel lobby sitting at a table, and we did this. So we said Power Analytics. We went before versus after. And we went month versus month top job analysis. So remember when we did the top job analysis at the date level and we saw the difference between 2 days? We can do the same thing at the month level. So think about the question. Gosh, I feel like my application is killing my CPU. Can I prove it? That's what the person's really asking. So look what we did. We said, okay, let's look at CPU. Now, I'm going to tell you this. This is a version 19 thing that's going to happen. This is one of those things that is we're trying to improve functionality. Right now, we're going to have you set the before month and after month. If you think about that, we don't have that concept yet. Right? There's no before month or after month. So what we do is in the script is we just say, okay, click on the prior and the next button to position to the month that you want for your before and after. So you see here how I've got a prior interval, next interval. So I want my before month to be October. So I'm right there right now. You might click in December and just have to click this a couple times. You can see why we want to improve it, because what happens if I wanted to go back 12 months? I'd have to click that 12 times. We want to make this easier for you, and we're working on it, we promise. But for now, just click the buttons, get to your month that you want as your before month. Look what I'm going to do, continue the script. Look familiar, right? It's gathering the information. Now it says go to the next one for your after month. So now I'm going to go to November and check this out. You can tell I love this stuff, because this is the stuff I used to do manually, and it takes a long time to do this in like 30 seconds. Shoot, it was 30 seconds and we're teaching it, right? Look at this, same format. Here's what the top jobs were in October. Here's what they're now in October or November, sorry. So it says basically in November, these guys are all new. So what does that mean? So in my real life example for my vendor one where we proved the application was causing issues, they weren't new jobs. All of a sudden they were new jobs that were big hitters. So before, before the upgrade, the application, everything was running fine. After the upgrade, those jobs turned out to be on the top of the list. So they could go to their vendor and say, hey, look at something went wrong in the upgrade. And by the way, that's what the vendor said. You're right. But they wouldn't have known that if we didn't measure it and prove them. So you can see here, same before versus after picture. I love that. And then we get this cool side-by-side thing. So again, very powerful stuff. You can really use this to your advantage to really understand, changes from month to month. And again, this was a supporting doc that we could do just to prove to the vendor. All right, that's before versus after. I mean, you can see that what's the key. If I had to review, set those dates at the on a by date graph. And by the way, it doesn't always have to be about CPU, right? When you compare and you do a top job analysis and you want to know what's different, look at this. You can do sync IO, async IO, logical IO, faulting. Does not matter. Play with the stuff. Have some fun. I mean, it is the coolest functionality, and I dare you to find another vendor or product that can go out here and do this. Not only do it efficiently, do it accurately, and really make a difference in your guys' day-to-day jobs. All right, so we're going to completely go over to file systems now, and then we'll take some questions. So I'm going to click over to my AIX box. And so for you IBMI guys that are starting to dive in the deep end of the pool, you're going to love this, because now we're looking at NMON data and we can see things historically. For a lot of you folks that have never seen PowerNav, look what just happened. We seamlessly morphed over to I call it like Unix AIX mode, and now the menus, right? You can still do all these cool graphs, but notice now you're in an AIX graph mode. So the product is smart enough, it knows what platform you're on, and then you can do Power Analytics just like you could before, and you can do monthly and enterprise reporting. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to do file systems. So remember, this file system stuff is kind of that hidden area that you need to make sure is okay. And as I learned this from my Unix expert, if you don't have this right, you can actually crash your system. And we just want a way for you guys to manage these file systems better. So I'm going to show you the first thing I did years ago when I really started to learn this file system stuff better. And I'm going to just analyze an individual file system off the bat. So we're going to look at all your file systems, and we're going to look at trends. So watch this. You notice I could be on any graph, but I'm on a file system by date graph. So I'm going to click on this, and again, we're going to run a script, and you can see, look how cool this is. It's going through every file system on this system, and it's doing trending. So not only is it going to do trending, it's going to look at your top directories, your top files, and your top inodes. I don't pretend to be an expert on inodes, but the way it was explained to me, and you experts out there can teach me, it's like pointers. So what we're doing is, you can see this is kind of processing through through all the different file systems. Doesn't take too long, but what's going to come up, it's going to be like a normal uh, file system display that you would do on a what, not green screen, putty you would do, but we kind of make it easy for you, and then we create hyperlinks where you can get down and see what your top directories and file systems are. Look at this. This looks exactly like you would do at a command line, but the difference is these are all hyperlinks. So whether you go in your file system or what you're mounted on over here, we show you the number of blocks, how much is used, what's available, and then we show you, and this is by the way a setting. The 80 and 90% is what you can set up in your client, which you want to flag things on. We're setting up warning at 80 and then red at 90. But look at this. By the way, new format, and this is going to come out for version 19 for all of our reporting. All of these are sortable. So watch when I click on this, right? You can get any kind of report and you can sort it any way you want. Very, very cool. We've added a row number over here for all our things. When you start to have enterprise reporting, you might have 30 and 40 things on a screen. Guess what you can do? You can see, oh, look at row 6 and so forth. Just to make, again, it's the little things that make analysis easier. So if I'm looking at this top file system, look at this hyperlink that goes right into a display mode. I can look at my trending. How cool is that? No kidding. So look at how that file system is growing at a 63% clip, right? We all need to know at this level what's going on. Maybe you didn't know that, but you're now, again, no more guessing, no more having a feeling. You're going to see this, your file systems at this deeper level just by doing that. Then I can look at my top directories. How cool is that? So in descending order, here's my top directories. And then I can get down to the file level and inodes. So very, very powerful. You just click back to the report. I can do this for anything, right? If I want to look at /var, there's my trends, 34%, same thing. There's my top files, directories, and so forth. So and by the way, you're probably seeing up here, ooh, greater than 10 KB. Well, where's all that coming from? Great observation, right? So here's the thing. In PowerNav, we create a bunch of default settings. We call them report variables that if you go under File Systems and go right here, we will show you the defaults. These are user-defined defaults that you guys, and we actually show you where it's at, where you'll go in and change it. I have to admit, I've been to enough sites where I haven't had too many make any changes from the default. Doesn't mean you guys can't make changes, but the thing I want you to see here is these are the defaults, and look at the screen right here. This screen says you're scanning directories so when that's turned on, you can actually look at your inode counts and you can see your directory sizes. That's a personal preference. I think right now currently we have that turned off as a default. But you'll see when you start to see this analysis, you'll see how valuable and important it is. But that is a personal thing you guys have to do. I'll show you a system where it's turned off. When it's turned off, I'm just going to kind of go down here to one I know that's turned off on. So here's me clicking to it, and you notice I'm in the navigator panel. I just connect to another AIX workload. Watch this. Power Analytics, File, Reporting Variables, and unless Murphy's Law gets me, it should be red. Thank you. So basically we're saying, hey, here's all your defaults, and by the way, directory scans is turned off, and we tell you exactly how to turn it on right here. So what does that mean? That means if I did file system analysis for this system, I wouldn't get top directories and I wouldn't get top inodes. I would get top files as the default. Again, this is a personal preference setting that you guys will have to do. All right, just wanted to show you that because a lot of people, when you run, what will happen, by the way, when you run this is you will see, we will tell you when scans are turned off when you're running something that's going to get directory information. In fact, that thing I just ran, if I would run this, and I'm not going to do it for the sake of time, but if I ran that on this system, a little pop-up window would come up and say, hey, in fact, I'll do it on this one. Watch this. I'm going to try to look at top directories. Watch what you get. You'll get a little pop-up window that's going to say, hey, Mayday, I can't show you any information because you have directory scans turned off. So watch this. It's going to go through. I'm going to show you this next center. Here you go. So we basically tell you, hey, to be able to see this neat information, you've got to turn on directory scans to true, and we just end the script for you. Very, very cool. All right, just a couple more, and then we'll take some questions. I'll go back to my AIX box. Let's run that exact report. So the first one kind of went through all our file systems. Now maybe you want to get specific, because what we did is we kind of, this data is actually, we actually get the data on Sundays, kind of like we do on the IBI system. So we measure all the file system data. It's in our MPG Data 4 system. We do that every Sunday. So just like IBMI, where we get all the disk library IFS information, we do the same thing in AIX. So let me go Power Analytics. Let's do the top directories. So this is going to allow us to say, hey, I want to set a before date and after date, and I want to see my trends for my top directories. So again, you can get down to a very granular level. So watch this. I'm going to say no to the dates, so I'll show you how to do it. Set the before date. Now this is kind of interesting. Little trick of the trade here. Notice my graph. This is subtle. I'm on a bi-week graph. These are Sundays. So I could go down to the date level, but what do we learn about the file system information? We collect it only on Sunday. So a neat thing we do in the script is we just give you all the Sundays. So here, if I went over to the 10th, I can say set that as my before date. I could go, let me get this out of the way here. I got my go-to webinar thing. I'm going to move that out of the way. All right, I'm going to set that as my after date. Now watch, we hit the continue button. Same concept as we did before on our IBMI before versus after analysis, but now we're getting down to the file system level. And this time we're going to look at the top directories. You can see down here we're comparing things. We're now creating our output. And wait for it, boom. So how cool is that? So when we check from September to December, we've got some new top directories out there, new things that weren't big hitters back in the before. But look at this. In yellow, we can see that we've got some things that grew. So guess what I would do? I'd make a mental note and go, oh, look at that file system. Now I want to see what were my top files. Let's do it. We know we can right-click in the middle, and we can go to our compare menu and look at that. Top file analysis. And now we can go in here, and I gotta get this out of my way. Come on, go to webinar. Sorry guys, I'm just kind of it's kind of picky. And this basically says we're gonna do the analysis. It says the last time we were here, do you want to do this? I'm gonna say no, even though I'm gonna do this one just to show you. This is new. You guys are gonna love this. We now have a little pop-up ability where you're just going to select your file system that you want to analyze. How cool is that? We know your file systems. You can say, okay, I want to analyze this one. Go in. It's going to come back, confirm the dates. Do we want to do that? Yep, we do. And now we go. So just like when we did the before versus analysis on IBMI, now we're going to show the top files within that individual file system. There you go. Very, very cool. And we can see the reason they're bigger, it's larger, growing, new one, new one, new one. Notice here that we actually show you when things decline, which is cool, no change. Here's a file that actually grew almost 20%. That's it, guys. That's how easy this before versus after is. I don't care what platform you're in, whether you're IBMI or Unix, you've got this beautiful concept where you can go in and do these comparisons. Let's go for it, Randy. Randy's in the room with me. We're going to actually take some questions, and let's see if anybody has a question. I'm going to hang it. I'm going to get to the attendees. So if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand and I will unmute you. And if you're shy, again, send us emails. Let's see, do we have any questions right there? Nope, you guys are quiet today. I don't see any hands up. Let's just wait a couple more. All right. Do you see one ready? I'm just make sure. Oh yeah. All right. Oh, right there. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But that, guys, we'll put this on the our website today. So if you have any questions, email us. We know you'll use this before versus after analysis. I'm telling you, I teach this all over the world, and people love it, and they can't believe how easy it is. And like I said, you'll start to see things you've never seen before. Anyway, thanks everybody, and we will have a Tech Talk Tuesday in January, and so look for an invite in that. I'm sure it's going to be. I think we're going to wait to about the middle of January to do it. So, all right, guys, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.